Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jumping Bomb Audio, your favorite Joshi Pro Wrestling podcast. I'm Aaron Bentley. I'm joined by Taylor Mainberg. How are you doing this morning, Taylor? It's not morning at all, but how are you doing?
It isn't morning. I'm doing all right. You know, it's been a bit of an interesting week in life in general. But I'm happy to be here, as always, talking with you, my good friend, about my favorite Joshi Pro Wrestling.
Wait, are you saying that Joshi Pro Wrestling is your favorite, or that we talk only about your favorite Joshi Pro Wrestling?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Okay, well, that's good. If you want to reach out to us in any way, you can find us on Twitter at JBombAudio, an account that we are failing miserably at maintaining. But, you know, there's just not wrestling going on, so it's pretty hard. I like to believe, and maybe this is just me saying this is future Aaron's problem, I like to believe that when wrestling gets going again, we'll do a better job.
Oh, almost certainly. And, you know, I think we create such good audio, perfect audio, that if our Twitter was also doing so well, there wouldn't be any room to grow and improve. So the audio is great. And soon, once wrestling comes back, the Twitter will be equally as good.
Wow. A real vote of confidence there. So I'm excited. So follow us there to watch the growth happen. I think, you know, you can get in the ground level of our Twitter account at JBombAudio. As I said, you can also find me at Aaron Like the Car, and Taylor is at TAMAIMBO, Tamaimbo.
That's right.
We need to do like a jingle with that, I think. I worked on one last episode, as everyone remembers, with the Kuru Kuru Pa.
But it worked much better for your Twitter handle than my Twitter handle.
That's right. All right, make sure that you are subscribed to the show so you get these as soon as they come out. We pretty much drop these every other Monday. I mean, I think we have every episode so far. But, you know, you'll have it there sitting on your phone, on the podcast app of your choice. If you search for Jumping Bomb Audio on whatever app you use, or you can get us as part of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. If you're using the Apple Podcast app, please give us a rating and review. I mean, people are probably out there looking for Joshi podcasts. So, you know, think about when you were trying to find things to help you keep up with Joshi or to learn more about Joshi. You might do a little search on Apple Podcasts. And if you're giving us ratings and reviews, it'll move us up in the old algorithm. People might find this podcast and enjoy it. If you have any interest in donating to the show, you can go to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio. However, considering the times we live in, I would suggest that you could much more ably spend your money by donating it to bail funds in any of the cities in which unrest is happening, or a million other things. So just, you know, do that instead. This is going to be, you know, this is not the show I've been most excited to do, for sure. Since we cover Joshi Pro Wrestling, I don't think we could do an episode without mentioning the tragic death of Hana Kimura. We will talk about that briefly. We're not going to talk about what happened or anything like that. So if you don't want to hear about that, you're not going to hear about it here. We're mostly going to talk about some memories, some recollections of Hana. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about Arisa Hoshiki retiring from wrestling. We're going to talk about Japan starting to reopen, so that will hopefully lead us to some wrestling happening. And we have some other notes about some upcoming shows. It looks like in the next few weeks we might have more wrestling to talk about. We're not going to be continuing our old Stardom rewatch for this episode, just because I can't speak for Taylor, but I wasn't really in the mood to watch Stardom in the past week or so. So we'll put that on hold. We'll probably come back to it because I don't think by our next episode there'll be enough wrestling for us to completely do an episode on, but we'll see what happens. So we'll start with talking about Hana Kimura. She, of course, passed away last week at 22 years old. And Taylor and I felt it was important to mention it, of course, but largely we just wanted to talk about some happy, joyful things that we remember about Hana, especially in our limited personal interactions with her. So, Taylor, I will open the floor to you, my friend, or just anywhere you want to start.
Okay. Well, I guess I was lucky enough to have seen her 4 times live, which actually going back, thinking about it this week, actually seemed, I was actually surprised to remember that I had seen her so many times in such a short amount of time. The first time I saw her was back in 2017. When I was in Japan and went to a Stardom Korakuen show. This is back when Hana was in Oedo Tai. And I just remember, I specifically actually remember her. I remember, seeing her at the show. I remember the match she was in because she had just such an aura about her. And I think a lot of people this week, over the last week, have talked about that, what an aura she had, even though she was still at that point in 2017 relatively new to the company. She wasn't one of the top wrestlers in the company, but she still gave off just such an aura of being a star. I almost said stardom, which I guess would be appropriate. Happened to see her again in Japan last year, as well as twice over the last WrestleMania weekend show at both the Stardom show itself and at the Ring of Honor New Japan joint show at Madison Square Garden. So I consider myself very lucky to have seen her so many times. Obviously, the sort of famous story of Hana at that Stardom show is if you don't know, it was raining that day of the Stardom show, and the show was delayed. I think it was delayed. It ended up being delayed an hour or something. We were all standing in the rain. It was cold and raining, and I think actually standing in the rain for an hour got me sick the following week because I was very sick after that WrestleMania weekend. But I just remember the wrestlers coming in and Hana having so much energy, being so excited to see us all and get us excited to see the show. It really helped for all us miserable people who were standing out in the rain. So that's really my 2 best memories of Hana.
I'm trying to remember what she said. I know that Nate, aka Epitasis, tweeted about this, or maybe retweeted his own tweet. I'm trying to scroll through and find it, but everybody, if you weren't there, it's just like everybody else was kind of, so Rossi is like leading the pack of all the wrestlers, and they kind of just look like, well, we're having to walk by all the people standing outside, into the building. And Hana was just like the opposite of that. But she said something funny and did her like, medal. She gave us the medal sign for sure. Okay, yes, I found Nate's tweet. She said, "It's going to be fun, woo!" and yelled at everyone. So I remember that. It was exciting. I think I have a dumb picture somewhere of all them walking through that day. But yeah, it was freezing rain, and we were all, I think, kind of down by that point.
Yeah, it had been a while. We didn't know no one knew what was going on because there was no one really coming out and saying, hey, this is what's happening. It was in a weird part of the city where it wasn't like you were in a vibrant part of New York where there was lots of fun people walking around. I think it was like across from a used car lot or something like that.
Yeah, so.
We were wrapped around this sort of very plain looking warehouse building. So it wasn't like there was a lot of excitement other than that going on. We were just sort of standing around waiting for something to happen and hopefully to get in and for the show to happen. But yeah, so that was sort of the ray of light in the rain, if you will.
Actually, one of my biggest memories of waiting in that line, Taylor, was you walking by and refusing to get in the line and telling us you were going to get coffee rather than standing in line.
No, I'd never said I don't drink coffee, so I definitely didn't say I was going to get coffee. I think I was going. I felt bad because you were at the front of the line. You were like fifth and sixth in line or something, and there was already a huge line all the way around the building. And I was like, well, I'm not going to cut in line, even though we had reserved seats.
Yeah, it didn't matter where you were in line.
So I guess it didn't really matter. But I think I felt guilty that everyone was standing in the rain and I had just shown up. And I didn't want to, jump up in line.
Ah, well, maybe you lied then and said you were going to get coffee.
Maybe I did, or maybe it was someone else who was going to get coffee. I don't know. But I don't drink coffee. That's a fact about me. So
wow, great fact. I'm glad we could.
Yeah.
When there's a quiz one day about us, everyone will hopefully remember that you don't drink coffee.
When people start showering me with gifts for doing this podcast, don't get me any coffee.
My other memories of that show are they messed up Hana's music when she came out. They her was at the end of the match. I can't remember, but somehow they messed up Hana's music. And she turned around and yelled at the, in a joking way, yelled at the people who were running the music. And then she kind of sat back. From where we were sitting, you could see her sitting back behind the curtain. And she just was pouty in a way, like the rest of the show. And at the time, I just thought it was funny. But after seeing her on Terrace House and kind of just seeing her personality and reflecting back, I feel like Hana was just, as a wrestler, was constantly working all of us. As far as who she was putting on this personality. But after the show, I love to do the mark picks. I will never apologize for Checky time. And so I got in Hana's line. Actually, I was first in Hana's line, and she had a sweatshirt on over her gear. And my wife was going to take the pictures of Hana and me. And so she captured this hilarious moment in a set of photos where Hana poses for the photo with me in her sweatshirt, suddenly realizes she has the sweatshirt on and makes this big show of unzipping the sweatshirt and kind of unveiling herself in a way. It was very funny. And, I guess she was expecting that all of the people in line were joshi perverts, of course. So she didn't want to be in the photo in a sweatshirt. So it was very funny to me just how big she did everything. She was just very sweet, very warm in those limited interactions. Other than, obviously, I wasn't with you in Japan the 2 times that you saw her. Did see her in Japan once at Shinkiba, or twice I saw her in Japan. On the same trip, once at Shinkiba. I was really bummed at the time that, they did 3 shows in a row, I think, and we just picked one and went to it. But that was when Kagetsu was doing her retirement tour. So on another one of those nights, they did, they re-teamed up, and she did the Oedo Tai get up and everything. And I was sad that I missed that. But then the final match the final show we saw that involved her on that trip was at Madison Square Garden when they did the tag team match on the pre-show of Wrestle Kingdom. So, that was excellent. Just I guess there was some concern leading up to it, and I was a little anxious of how are the fans going to respond to this? But it was a pretty warm response, and especially as the match kept going, they really got everybody into it. So that just made me feel so happy for them. And it was great to see them get that big opportunity, and in front of that huge crowd, and just a great memory. But I think the main thing to take away is just what a warm person Hana was. Just a great personality, sweet. I had a tweet, which I just stole it from the Stardom subreddit. So, I didn't do any work here, but she had a thing after Bushiroad acquired Stardom, And part of her statement in the press conference was that she wanted to bring pro wrestling to people who were institutionalized and incarcerated, to like bring them comfort, or to show the kids who were in those situations like a different world that was available or possible. And it's hard to, you can't talk about Hana. You can't separate Hana as a wrestler from what appeared to be, from all indications, a person who genuinely cared about others and spent a lot of her time and her life trying to bring joy to other people. There's a billion stories going around Twitter of wrestlers that she met and how kind she was to them. So I would encourage you, if you want, to seek those out. I know there was a great thread from Brody King where he talked about meeting Hana and then running into her again at Madison Square Garden. So I don't know. It's just hard to talk about, but great person.
Yes, and clearly beloved from all the tributes. Actually, yeah. NWA just, I think, posted a video yesterday or 2 days ago, something like that, with Thunder Rosa talking about Hana and her experience. That's definitely worth checking out. I saw it on Instagram, but I think it's also on YouTube as well. I think it's part of their Girl Power show. But that was very nice. It's about a 7-minute video of her talking about it with some photos from her time in Japan. So I would recommend looking that up as well.
All right. So that's really all I wanted to do to talk about Hana. Maybe in the future, we'll talk more about her career, but all I'm capable of talking about at this point. Anything else you want to say, Taylor, before we move on?
No, I think I echo your sentiment as well.
All right. In a pretty big news that came out of Stardom before any of this happened, Arisa Hoshiki has decided to retire from wrestling. In her statement that came out, she said that she was suffering from neck and head injuries, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly, and basically was trying to work through them and ultimately got to a point where she decided that it was just better off that she stop wrestling. If you recall, she was supposed to defend the white belt, Stardom's white belt, against Natsuko Tora at the first No People Gate show at Korakuen Hall. And suddenly in the middle of the show, we found out that she wasn't there. And we would never see her wrestle again in Stardom. Now, of course, she's retired once before and come back. So I guess we can't count that out. She's like 24 years old. So she's there's plenty of time ahead of her. But sad that injuries would force a young woman who clearly has a passion for wrestling, and since she left and was drawn back later. So just a bummer to see another joshi have to retire, especially because of injuries.
Yes, and I think I saw that Rossi wants her to come back and have one last match next year when they do the 10th anniversary show. I saw that going around, so she may come back and do one match, which would be nice to sort of be able to give her a farewell, because as you mentioned, she just sort of she was supposed to be on that No People Gate show and didn't end up wrestling on that show, and then of course show stopped happening and she retired. So it would be nice to get her back one more time to be able to give her a proper farewell.
Yeah, she definitely deserves a retirement ceremony. I mean, presumably she had one when she retired the first time, but still, she came back and gave quite a bit of time and apparently quite a bit of her body to pro wrestling. So she deserves a nice send off. Until recently, I hadn't watched the old Arisa stuff from her first run in Stardom. So I'm just kind of getting to know that part of her career. What were your general thoughts about Arisa as a wrestler, as just whatever? Any thoughts you had about her?
It's funny because we were just talking about the Stardom show in New York. It's so funny because I was in the front row for that show, and part of the deal with if you bought tickets in the front row, you got a signed, not a portrait, but a sort of a signed card from a random wrestler that were on your seat when you sat down. And when I got there, it turned out that I had gotten Arisa. But at that point, she still was sort of in the mid card, maybe lower mid card. She hadn't done a lot. I got it, and I was sort of like, oh, this is fun. And then the month later was the Cinderella tournament that she won, and she really took off from there, and then obviously won the title and nearly broke the defense record. So I felt like I always had the connection from getting that, from sort of being like, oh, I got this from a wrestler that, you know, obviously I have favorites. She wasn't my favorite. I didn't dislike her. And then, of course, she sort of right after that moment took off. So I sort of always had the connection that way. And I always enjoyed her matches. I enjoyed a lot of her matches defending the titles. I thought that they were really, really great. Obviously, a big loss to the company, who had put her in a position to be one of the bigger names in the company. So I'll definitely miss her.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling for me, and honestly hard to process after everything else that happened. But I was never a big fan of hers. I think anybody who knows me was aware of that. I think largely it was kind of what you're talking about. When she came back, she was kind of just there, you know, not really in a prominent spot. And then suddenly, to me, it was out of nowhere. She won the Cinderella tournament. And I look back at it later, and she hadn't, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure this is true. She had not won a singles match, period, until in her comeback, until the Cinderella tournament. And suddenly, you know, she wins a bunch in a row and goes on to beat Momo Watanabe. So part of that is my own bias, that I'm a huge Momo fan, hated to see her lose. Probably the only wrestler that I like genuinely, it like makes me bummed when she loses a wrestling match, which is goofy, but you know, just who I am, how I feel. So I didn't like that, but also I'm just the kind of person where it really frustrates me when someone is like universally beloved and I don't get it. Like I feel like during her white belt run, all the talk was about how she was one of the best wrestlers in the company, you know, one of the best joshi wrestlers, period. And I never saw that. Like she never really peaked that high for me. Now, and she didn't really have awful I didn't think their matches were like really bad or anything. I thought she could be sloppy and kind of stilted at times, and that got better as she was around more. But she just never really hit that gear for me that really made me connect to her. And so I just hate when everybody else gets something and I don't. It's like a really frustrating feeling for me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't think she was the best wrestler in the company. I thought she had a lot of very good matches, as we'll talk about in a few minutes. I think part of it, at least for me, is that Stardom has sort of been so spoiled in the past with having so many really great wrestlers, as we talked about a few weeks ago when we covered that Sendai Girl show with Io Shirai, is obviously one of the great female wrestlers in Stardom's history, if not in Joshi, you know, in the last decade or even more than that. You know, they had Io Shirai and they had Kairi Hojo and people like Momo Watanabe and Jungle Kyona, like these wrestlers who are really at the very tip top. And, you know, you sort of start to see so many of these people like that you expect that everyone should be able to get to that level, because all of these people have gotten there. And some people, and this applies not only to Stardom, but really all wrestling around the world, that some people will probably never get to that point. Or if they get there, it will be very brief. And so I think Arisa was very talented, but certainly not to the level that some of the previous big stars, especially the people who held titles in Stardom, had been. So I can sort of see where you're coming from. Yeah,
but, you know, I'm happy that I've tried to change in my life from like getting irritated when that happens to like being happy for people who something connects with them, even though it doesn't connect with me. That was like a hard change in my life. Like when I was a kid, I would hate fucking any, big pop music. I was like, this sucks. Anybody who likes this is stupid, and it's like, oh wait, people, and I'm not trying to be one of those, let people enjoy what they enjoy people. But, I'm glad that people had a connection to her, because to me, that's where all of this is valuable. Like, there's no real reason, to do anything, but especially to watch pro wrestling, right? Like, it doesn't make any difference in like the world. It does. That's unfair to say, because it can, but you know what I mean. Especially in like what's going on right now, it seems silly. Pro wrestling can seem silly, but it's really important for us to find things that we connect to, that bring us joy. Like, I find that stuff very important, especially when all this stuff is going on. So if she did, the fact that she connected to people and made them happy, and they got a lot of joy out of watching her wrestle, I think rules, and is a testament to her, that she was good. Even if I didn't always like her, clearly she made a connection with people. And that's what pro wrestling is about making connections with the fans. And she did that. So it was a career that was obviously too short. And especially it's a bummer for it to end because of injuries. But not that Arisa is listening to this podcast, but, I hope she knows, and I'm sure she does, that it was a valuable endeavor that affected people.
Yeah, and to be able to go out, at least to have the ability to recognize that, I'm having issues with the head and neck, but to my knowledge, she is not, hampered in her day-to-day life, unless there's some big news I don't know. She doesn't have anything broken or anything like that, so she can still retire and, at her young age, still have a full life. Now, unfortunately, it won't involve wrestling, but especially after all the events of this week, sort of important to see the silver lining, in that she retires as someone who still has a full life ahead of her and will be able to enjoy it, to the fullest. And, maybe she does come back to Stardom in a non-wrestling role. We don't know. It's happened in the past with some people in Stardom. They've already, as I mentioned, talked about bringing her back for at least one match. So maybe she, is able to do one match a year or something like that, to at least keep in the spirit of things, or she's able to become a manager or work for Stardom's office now, especially that they've been acquired by Bushi Road. They may have, a need for more hiring. So, the future, could still be bright for her, I'll say.
I'm sure it is. She seems like a delightful young woman. So rooting for her, obviously. She just always seems goofy, which like sometimes affected my ability to enjoy her wrestling. But like outside of that, like in her promos and stuff, I'm like, you're such a goof, Arisa. I like that about her for sure. So I hope whatever she does, she enjoys it. But there's not a lot of wrestling going on, so maybe people want to go back and watch some Arisa matches. So I thought we would talk about some ones that we thought highly of. So Taylor, what are some matches that you would suggest to people?
So I just have this list of matches. Not going to say too much about each individual match, but you can go and find them. I believe they should all be on Stardom World at this point. So my first one is from February 17th of last year. Queen's Quest, Momo Watanabe and Utami Hayashishita versus Arisa Hoshiki and Mayu Iwatani. As I said, from February 17th, 2019, Queen's Fest 2019. From Gold May, which was May 16th, 2019, Momo Watanabe versus Arisa Hoshiki. Arisa versus Hazuki from Big Summer in Tokyo on July 24th, 2019. And finally, talking about it again from American Dream in the Big Apple, which was Stardom's WrestleMania show, which took place April 5th. Oedo Tai versus Stars, the 8-person tag. Definitely worth checking out. That whole, I talked about at the beginning of the show, us standing in the rain and me getting sick and everything, but that's a really great show. If you have not seen that show, I highly recommend you check it out. The bottom rope of the ring is broken the entire time, but you won't notice. It's a really super fun show with a lot of great matches.
Yeah, I guess that was the reason why we were outside for so long. They were trying to fix the bottom rope. But yeah, it was a great show. Just generally one of my great memories. That the Momo Utami match for the white belt was one of my favorite matches of that whole year. And, I hadn't, unlike you, Taylor, I had not seen Stardom live before. So it was a big moment. The only match I wanted to comment on there was the Momo versus Arisa match, of course. I just didn't like this match, which, if you want to hear my thoughts on this match, I reviewed this match on Wrestling Omakase with friend of the show, John. We talked about this whole show. And I was just bummed that Momo was like a absolute destroyer of people her entire reign. And Arisa beat her in 12 minutes or something, and it just pissed me off so much. Oh.
I'm sorry to upset you, Aaron, by including that match.
I know. I wish that she wasn't retiring because of injuries, because I can't get the requisite enjoyment out of the fact that she will not break Momo's defense record without sounding like a really awful person. So moving on. Yes, all these are on Stardom World. The matches I'm going to talk about, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I keep a Stardom match guide, and it's the pinned tweet on my Twitter account. You can check it out, the 2019 and the 2020 one. I'm going to make a 2011 one too, since Taylor and I have been going through there. I didn't make any before that. I just started doing them in 2019. And I have links to all the matches that I thought were good on that match guide, so you can find that. But you can pretty easily just find these on Stardom World. The ones I wanted to talk about, all these are from 2019. Arisa Hoshiki and Tom Nakano versus Momo Watanabe and B. Priestley on June 2, the Shining Stars tour. Arisa versus Tom Nakano from June 16th, Shining Destiny. This was, a lot of people really like this match. I think it ended up pretty high on the VOW end of the year match of the year award, or match of the year list. And a lot of people had it ranked really high. It didn't connect with me on that level, but I thought it was really good. Just not 4.5 stars, or I think some people had it, which I think is insane. But, everybody watches wrestling differently. Arisa and Jamie Hayter on November 4th on the Best of Goddesses tour. Jungle Kiona and Konami versus Arisa and Tom Nakano from November 24th, the Goddesses or Goddess of Stars tour. And then Arisa versus Konami on December 24th, the year-end climax. So I think that's another one that a lot of people liked. So I think all those are worth checking out if you just want to watch some Arisa matches. I'm sure we can throw at least these lists up on our Twitter account, so you don't have to rewind and try to write down the the matches or whatever. But that's Arisa Hoshiki, so she will be missed, obviously. And I think at a much different time, it'll be good for us to talk about, Stardom going forward. It's not at all time to talk about that for me at this point, but it's going to be interesting for them. So talking about new shows happening or Japan kind of reopening, they've lifted the state of emergency and have set deadlines not deadlines, but dates for things to open back up. Now, much differently than America, they got the cases down to next to nothing, especially in Tokyo, before they started opening back up. We should say that Stardom was supposed to record some matches at sometime the end of this week, the last of May. To no one's surprise, they canceled those recordings, and we don't know when those are going to happen. Taylor, you were telling me that Dave Meltzer reported in the Observer that maybe something is going to happen next week related to those.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly clear. He said that it had been moved to next week. I don't know if that means that the shows themselves are happening next week or if the announcement about when the shows are happening is happening next week, because obviously they had just sort of offhandedly mentioned, oh, we're going to have some shows before the end of May. That's all we found out. And obviously this week they didn't announce anything with everything going on. So I don't know whether it will be, they may just say, hey, we're doing a show tomorrow. I don't know. The fact that, I still think going to have no fans. I think they're still going to do no fans at this point. So I guess you could announce a show a day in advance, because at that point you're not trying to sell tickets or anything like that. But we still don't know. It's a little bit up in the air, and we'll have to see. But I'm sure starting next week, we'll probably start to get clarity on Stardom and probably a few other Joshi promotions in terms of what their plans are moving forward.
There were some dates that were floating around, but I wasn't clear whether those applied to pro wrestling, because the dates that were going around related to sports. And while obviously pro wrestling is a sport, there was some discussion about whether the live entertainment events would apply more to wrestling. All we know is that sports are starting back June 19th in Japan with no fans. There was something going around today that Korakuen has announced they're not going to have events even with no fans until July 10. But I think sometime in July, we'll be able to start seeing I think we'll be able to start seeing fans at wrestling shows sometime in July.
Yeah, I think there are probably going to be some shows. There are some shows announced that have fans, but when we talk about fans, we're talking about maybe 20, 30, 40 people. We're not talking about very many people. So there may be a few shows with fans, but in terms of having, shows like you think of before all of this went down, in terms of trying to, have a lot of people in the building, probably won't be until July that those happen. I know a few promotions came out this week announcing shows that had been postponed. There was supposed to be an Ice Ribbon Actress Girls joint show on June 21st at Korakuen, which was canceled or was postponed, I think was the official language. So some things are still being canceled. Some promotions are going to start running very small shows with fans, but we're sort of crawling into, back into normalcy in terms of having fans at shows.
Yeah, I would imagine August, September, we'll be seeing, I'm imagining full shows with full arenas, or not.
Yes,
arenas,
of course, with the understanding that everything sort of proceeds as normal.
Right.
And nothing, I know yesterday or the day before they announced that there had been a spike somewhere in Japan. Now, of course, a spike comparatively to the rest of the world is very small. I think it went up to 21 new cases in one day.
Right.
Which is very small compared to what's going on in the United States, but it is much bigger. I think they had been announcing something like 4 or 5 new cases a day. So it could always go the other way, but as of now, the plan is hopefully in the next, month or 2 months to start getting those fans back.
And our last news item for the week, Pure J is joining IndependentWrestling.tv.
Yeah, exciting news. It looks like it's not exactly clear what is going on because no one is doing shows right now, but it looks like Independent Wrestling TV is trying to get a lot of smaller independent Japanese promotions onto the service. We talked about previously Sendai Girls. We reviewed that big show a few weeks ago. They have Heat Up, which is a men's promotion, and Freedoms, which is another men's promotion. And they just announced that Pure J will be joining at the beginning of June, which is in a few days from when we're recording this. We're not entirely sure what this means. Obviously, right now, no one's running shows. So, for example, for Sendai Girls, they've largely been slowly uploading archived shows, old shows. I think at this point, they've uploaded 3 or 4 Sendai Girls shows. I think they've uploaded a few Freedom shows. So we will have to see when these promotions come back, and start running live shows, start airing shows, will they appear on the service or will they not? Or maybe they will appear on the service on a delay. I know in Japan, Nico often airs a lot of these smaller promotions. Maybe it will be a thing where the show airs on Nico. It's there for the 2-week period. It goes off, and maybe then it goes on IWTV. I don't know. Maybe it's just that they will get archived shows. It's not clear. Now, PureJ doesn't have a lot of archives to draw from. They've been around for less than 3 years, technically, because they're a spinoff of JWP, because the JWP naming rights went back to the rights holder. And so this is technically a new promotion, PureJ, which has been around for about 2.5 years, just under 3 years. So we will see. It's not sure right now, but at least for now, there will be some PureJ content coming to IWTV. It looks like they are trying to get these smaller Japanese promotions. They started their own Japanese Twitter account, IWTV did. So it looks like they are at least somewhat serious about having this service provide Japanese, joshi and puro content.
Well, I mean, it's a good service. Like I signed up for the Sendai Girls show that we watched. It's like well done. I think I used a Apple TV app for it. Was good, easily used, easily accessible. It just didn't have a lot of content that was interesting to me personally. So if they add a lot of joshi, some of the smaller joshi shows, I mean, it was better than Nico Nico, the quality. So it's something I would be interested in if they came up, if the shows showed up quickly.
Yeah, if you have any interest, obviously right now there's no shows happening, so there's not a lot of, in fact, I think there's almost no new content going up on the site now, but they have been very good. I've been subscribed to them for a while. It's just, I think, $9.99 a month, I think is the price point. And they do a lot of, when wrestling is happening normally, they do a lot of live streams. So even if you only have interest in 2 or 3 shows a month, there is a lot of value there if you want to check out a show from a promotion that you've never seen before. I think it would be really awesome if they could live stream some of these Japanese promotions. I think that would be a lot of fun. And would definitely get them a lot of good exposure. I know they did stream one of the Sendai Girls shows. Now, obviously, it's an old show, so it wasn't a live stream, but they did sort of put it on their live stream channel to hopefully get some more people to check it out. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there for exciting things, the ability to give exposure. I know I've been saying for a long time that a lot of these small promotions could start a streaming service, but we at this point have so many streaming services that it can often be hard for a small promotion that might only run 2 or 3 shows a month, and maybe they're not big shows, to justify having their own streaming service, where it would be nice to have a bunch of maybe these smaller Japanese promotions get together in this way and have one streaming service where you could see multiple promotions, and that would get eyes on your, PureJ now almost undoubtedly will have more eyes on it being on IWTV than they do now, where they're largely either airing on Nico or just throwing matches up on their YouTube channel. So I think it's a net positive for anyone who joins in terms of getting more eyeballs on these smaller promotions.
So normally, or when okay, I guess not normally, because only 2 of our shows happened with current wrestling. So I guess normally we don't talk about current wrestling on this show. But in normal times, when things return, this is the part of the show where we would do what we call Spark Notes, where we kind of talk about some of the shows we couldn't talk about at length. So Taylor, do you want to tell us about some of the shows that have been going on?
Yeah, so the first one is, we're sort of in a weird time because we're recording this just before the Tokyo Joshi pay-per-view is about to air. It has not aired yet, but by the time you hear this, it will have aired, so I'm putting it in Spark Notes. It's on a new service, and I think I wrote this down right, openrec.tv, which is sort of the Japanese version of Twitch. If you've ever heard of Twitch, the streaming service, it does a lot of gaming streaming, game streaming, play-alongs, things like that. This is definitely an experiment for Tokyo Joshi to see what happens. They have these different price points because they're not only offering the show itself, but if you pay a little extra, you can go to an after party with some of the wrestlers over, obviously, this video platform. They're sending out, I think, signed memorabilia from the promotion. So it's an interesting test to see what happens. And it's a way, I think, sort of the logic behind it is it's a way to run shows and recoup some of the attendance monies that they're losing, obviously having to run these shows with no people. You have the people coming, paying, I think the lowest tier is about $15 US, and it goes, I think, all the way up to $50 US. So it's a good way, a test to see if this is a way to recoup some of that lost money not being able to run shows. As always, happening are Choco Pro shows. They happen now, at this point, they're happening every few days or so. The most recent one aired today, which is May 30th. They had one last Saturday, which happened right after Hana's passing, with Asuka in the main event. Asuka and Hana had teamed in Wrestle 1 as Flourish. So that is a show I highly recommend you check out, even if you haven't watched Choco Pro. I watched it on Saturday. It was sort of cathartic for me to see Asuka there. They have a very nice tribute, but it's not too much, if you're worried about it making you too sad. I don't think it will do that. It's a nice mix between having this tribute, but also providing an exciting and fun wrestling show for you to watch and hopefully cheer you up. And Ice Ribbon is actually doing quite a lot. They're still running their weekly dojo shows. They're coming to the conclusion of the IWGQ title tournament. They have the finals airing today, I believe. They had Hiragi Kurumi's 10th anniversary party on their own version of pay-per-view on Nico Nico this week, where I believe it was something like $30. You could watch the show, which is her anniversary show. I know Arisa Nakajima from Seedling teamed with Tsukasa Fujimoto as the best friends team. That was Arisa's first match, I believe she said, in 2 months. She has not wrestled in 2 months. They're continuing to do Peas Party shows, which are sort of the smaller, fun shows they're doing. And actually, also today, they had a live airing on Samurai TV, which is really fun. They had a Drop Kickers tag title match, which is Tsukasa Fujimoto and Tsukushi defending their tag titles. So a little bit of a different feel, still no audience shows, but having it aired on Samurai, I haven't watched it quite yet. I'm looking forward to it. Gives it a little bit of a different feel. So still a lot of exciting things still going on in wrestling as, we creep closer to getting audiences back.
All right. Well, I guess that's about everything we had to talk about, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Sadly, we will not be doing our rookie rankings on this show.
No, our rookie rankings, as you mentioned, it's probably doubtful that there will be enough major wrestling happening next week to cover a whole show. So I could imagine next time we gather together, we may return to Stardom of old and to the rookie rankings.
We may indeed. I will look forward to it. So I guess that's it. Thanks everybody for listening. This is a shorter show than usual. I hope you understand under the circumstances. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us at JBomb Audio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor is at Tay Mambo. Subscribe to the show, please. Please give us a rating and review. And find a bail fund in your local area or in one of the areas, like Minneapolis or Louisville or across New York, where we've seen a lot of this stuff going on that you can donate to. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time.